Story 1. I grew up in a very scientific family. Never knew my dad's stance on ghosts, but they were never talked about, so it really didn't matter. One day I was in high school and we were having dinner, and I decided to ask my dad about our old house and moving into it when I was just a baby. So he told me a story. Apparently, when we moved into this house, we lived there for about a week before we started to receive gifts once a week. Every Friday morning, my dad told me that there would be some sort of handcrafted gift sitting on the mantle of our fireplace. My dad was reasonably freaked out by this because we were the only ones with keys to the house, and the last owner moved well out of state. So he informed the local police and they decided to patrol the property every Friday night looking for intruders. I found nothing, and as you could imagine, the gifts kept coming. So my dad told me they eventually gave up, and feeling helpless, he went to our local church. Eventually, he had a priest come and bless the house, and we stopped receiving the gifts. What really freaked me out about this was the fact that my dad never believed in ghosts and didn't mention once that a ghost was causing these gifts to appear. He's an engineer, so he always tries to debunk people's paranormal stories with a realistic explanation. But he was 100% serious with his story. One of the gifts we received we actually still have. It's a wooden sled with a small painting of a man, presumably my dad, pulling me and my sister on the sled. We received this gift about 8 months to a year before my mother passed away from cancer. So that made the painting on the sled very freaky in hindsight. My dad only told me this story once, and he denied ever telling me about it when I asked him about it recently. If I can find the sled, I'll post a picture. It's very small and looks quite old. Story 2. When I was young, I had terrible insomnia. I would imagine things and feel incredibly unsafe, as though I were being watched, although I never admitted this to anyone. So I began sleeping on the couch with my back against the wall, and had to have the TV or some sort of light on. I missed an immense amount of school because of this, so my mom had me see a neurologist. The neurologist diagnosed me with some things, but the crazy part was that during my sleep study, I slept amazingly well, had no issues at all, and slept in a real bed. Eventually, I got transferred to a children's hospital, and speaking to the doctor, I explained I would see things and felt uncomfortable. They had thought I was experiencing sleep paralysis. I would see a large, dark figure that I believed to be a man who would walk the halls at night. I would see or hear things happening, like a cup falling off the counter or items on an entry table moving. One evening, I remember seeing a black figure that was smaller than a basketball run across my bedroom floor, hit the wall, and go under my bed. As I was convincing myself it was just my imagination, my mom came running in since she heard the thud. At the time, we hadn't all concluded the ghost thing, so I didn't say what it was, but ran out of the house and spent the night at my friend's because I was terrified. When they told my mom, she went ghost white. She pulled me aside and explained she was experiencing things too. She described in detail what I was seeing. That evening, she approached my brother and asked broad questions. Do you have anything weird happen at home? Etc. He also described what we experienced. My mom's experienced the feeling of someone sitting in her bed many times. She said she'd think it was one of us and look, but there wouldn't be anyone there. Just an indent as if someone were there. It was then that I realized it must have paranormal activity, and I believed it ever since. When we moved out of that house, all my sleep issues abruptly stopped and I haven't experienced them since. Story 3. My girlfriend's grandfather's ashes were on a little shelf in the living room, right next to a very solid and heavy angel statue. Well, one weekend, she and I were fooling around on the living room couch, and under the corner of my eye, I saw the angel statue fly off the wall, accompanied by a deep grunt. Now, when I say this thing flew off the wall, I'm talking about 7 to 8 feet of air before landing on the hard wood and leaving a dent where the wing hit. Even if this thing had fallen off the wall, it would have dropped straight down, not soared with force. Well, we both stood there in shock, and I whispered if she had heard the grunt as well, to which she agreed, so we both booked it for the day. That night at dinner, we told her parents what happened, leaving out the naughty bit, and Megan's younger sister burst into tears, saying she had seen a dark figure at the foot of her bed the last couple of nights but didn't want anyone to think she was crazy. Grandfather that died had mental health issues that caused a lot of pain. After that day, I was a believer. Story 4. My wife and I swear that our daughter used to talk to ghosts when she was a toddler. She was an only child at the time. The first instance I remember was her telling me that she was talking to Nana. That's what I called my grandmother, who passed away about 15 years before my daughter was born. My daughter was young, and so I hadn't even talked about Nana to her, so I showed her a picture and asked who she spoke to. There were 4 women, 3 of whom I didn't even know, but without hesitation she pointed to my Nana. Okay, no biggie. Some months later, my wife and I are trying for baby number 2. After my wife got pregnant, my daughter was sitting next to her on the couch, put her head on her belly, and said, "Mommy, there's a baby in there." Okay, maybe that's a coincidence. She overheard us saying something. A few weeks later, my wife miscarries. Maybe my daughter picked up on her sadness, who knows, but she again puts her head on her stomach and says, "Mommy, there's no baby in there anymore." And several months and one more, a very early miscarriage later, my daughter tells us, "I was talking to my brother last night and he said that my sister is coming to live with me soon." Again, she's an only child and has no living brother. We were still trying at this point but had not taken any tests. We picked one up that night and sure enough, she was pregnant. When the time came to reveal the gender, I wasn't even interested. My daughter had already said it was a girl. Sure enough, I have 2 daughters. Man, every time I hear stories about kids saying something creepy or seeing something nobody else does, I just get major goosebumps. Story 5. I was always on the fence about ghosts because there was no scientific evidence of them being real. And I was going through a big question phase with religion and the afterlife at the time anyway. But my family moved into an old farmhouse when I was a kid. This was a very old farmhouse with a build date around the Civil War. The original owner's name was still in the old barn out back, and we found numerous old antiques built into the walls when we completely renovated the place. A few odds and ends things happened after we first moved in, but distinct things started happening to me after I turned a certain age, but never to my sister until after she turned the same age too. The most prominent memory I have. The upstairs consisted of 2 bedrooms. The first bedroom was the room at the top of the stairs. The second bedroom was in a separate room just to the left of the stairs. I had the private room. My sister's room was the landing. When someone walked up the stairs, it was very distinct. You could hear each individual step, and the creaks got louder as the person approaching got closer. So one night I was sitting on my bed watching TV or something, and I heard my sister come up the steps and go lay in her bed, so I started talking to her. When she didn't answer me, I got annoyed and went into her room to figure out what her problem was, only to find that she was not there. My mind was blown because I knew I heard her. I called for her and she had been downstairs the entire time. I never felt threatened, but it did seem that this entity liked picking only on women. Even my mother, who absolutely doesn't believe in ghosts, had to admit some odd things had happened. I think the funniest thing was having my ponytail pulled while I was doing the dishes. I don't know why it was so funny. It just cracked me up that whatever it was felt like playing with my hair. Story 6. So in high school, I worked at kids' birthday parties. The place was basically a giant gym, and gymnastics and dance classes were also held there. One day I came in and one of the girls I worked with, who was very spiritual and very religious, was totally freaked out. During the gymnastics class she taught that morning, one of the kids was staring up the ceiling. When she asked the kid what he was doing, he said, "There's a little boy up there," and pointed at the ceiling. Strange enough, but whatever. Kids are weird. Later, 2 girls who were working a birthday party before mine came out of the gym and were visibly shaken. A pair of 5-year-old twins went down a slide and then stared at the ceiling. They both said that there was a little boy up there, the same spot in the ceiling as the kid from the morning gymnastics class mentioned. We all went in and inspected the ceiling. Of course, it was just a regular gray warehouse-type ceiling, but we were all super freaked out at that point. During my party, I was pushing a little boy in the giant swing we had in the gym. He too began to stare at the ceiling. He said directly to my face, "Hey, there's a little boy up there." We told all of our coworkers and managers about the 3 separate experiences we had today with children from different parties and classes seeing a little boy in the ceiling. The next day, we had downtime between parties and nobody was in the gym. There are cameras in the gym that allows parents to see their children playing from the lobby. My manager called us out of the break room. "Guys, check this out." We come out and see this screen, which is streaming from the gym, showing the giant swing going back and forth. Nobody's in there. It's just the swing moving. I like to think that the ghost was truly a little boy who just wanted to play and he finally got to go on the swing. Could be worse. I definitely didn't like being in the gyms alone after that. A few weeks after this incident, I was on vacuum duty in the gyms one night. As I was vacuuming, the lights all turned off. And it's a big place, kind of like a warehouse. So the lights were huge and were loud when turned on and off. They all just started shutting off one by one. I ran out and definitely did not finish vacuuming that night. We vacuumed the gyms in pairs after that. Story 7. I'm still not sure if I believe it, but there have been some weird things in my life that I can't explain. When I was a kid, I woke up in the middle of the night and my grandma was standing at the end of my bed, wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. I remember that it was summer and the sky was still light, but not light enough for me to read, so I guess it was about 9 p.m. I sat up, she put her finger to her lips, and I rubbed my eyes a couple of times because I was sleepy. But when I looked back, she had gone. I just snuggled back under my covers, thinking how nice it was to see her because I hadn't seen her for ages, and I hoped she would still be there when I woke up. The next morning, my house was eerily quiet. My mom was in a worse mood than normal, but she had been crying, so I asked her what was wrong. My grandma passed away the night before. She'd been crossing a road after her bingo turned out. At 8:30 p.m., about 60 miles away from where we lived, she had a massive brain hemorrhage in the middle of the road and didn't even make it to the other side, let alone to my house 60 miles away. She was wearing a teal blue skirt and matching blouse. I heard about these kinds of phenomena when a recently deceased person visits someone they're close with to say goodbye. I'm not sure if I want that or to just remain blissfully ignorant about it. What about you? Can you take a ghostly farewell apparition? Let me know in the comments and hit the like and subscribe button to my channel for more spooky stories. Story 8. Once when I was in university, I went to see my therapist, whom I had been seeing twice a week for about 5 months. This day he was uncharacteristically quiet and I asked him if he was alright. He said he was fine and we continued through what would be one of our most breakthrough sessions. A lot of repressed memories came up through it that have helped me to heal. At the end of the session, I asked him why he was acting differently today than other days. He said that when I walked in, I was accompanied by a warrior-like person. He said he had the overwhelming feeling to perform as best he professionally could that day and that he got the sense that this warrior had fought a lot of battles to protect me. He said this warrior guy actually appeared in the corner of his office and stood there, right before I entered. Like I said, he got the feeling that he had to do his job really well during that session, and that this warrior had been protecting me. He disappeared when I entered. I didn't know anything about his presence apart from things just being weird. This would seem coincidental, except that 10 years later I was living on the other side of the world. I had a Puerto Rican neighbor I would see occasionally, and eventually, I got pretty close with him and his family. One day as I was walking by, he got kind of quiet and weird and then said in broken English, "Do you know there's a soldier who follows you around?" I knew instantly who he was talking about. In both instances, the warrior or soldier was described the same, just over 6 feet, blonde curly hair, wearing primitive warrior clothing, and strangely, a white guy. Neither of these people could have known that my closest brother, who passed away when he was young, was over 6 feet tall with blonde curly hair and was always my protector. Story 9. I still don't believe in ghosts, but I did have a strange experience. I had a cat that I found in a ditch many years ago. She was cute and I petted her, so she followed me back down the train tracks about a mile to my home. I opened the door for her and she went in. She was offered the opportunity to go back out, which she did for a moment, but then came back in. She was mine forever. I've had my pets over the years and I've loved them all, but this one was different. She wanted to be near me all the time. I'd often said I'd never had a cat who made me feel like my personal space was being violated before. She followed me up to my bed every night and purred me to sleep. She passed away fairly quickly. I barely even had a chance to say goodbye. I knew she was ill, having been diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, which cat owners will know is not a good thing to hear. Although progress has been made, ask your vets about the pens. They work miracles for my current cat, also has it. She had taken a turn for the worse and I thought her treatment was working. On examination, they found tumors in her stomach and liver. She had been dealt a mortal blow and was only going to suffer harder and harder. In the most painful one I've ever had to deal with, I put her down and she even meowed one last time before the end. I forgot to mention that this cat was also the most talkative I've ever had. She frankly wouldn't shut up. I buried her in the yard to keep her close and tried to go to sleep, completely beside myself with grief. As I lay down, I heard something familiar. I live in an old house and my bedroom doesn't have a door, so I installed one of those plastic sliding doors. The slats make a telltale clicking sound when they're disturbed, like they did when a cat pushed in between them and the door frame. I heard this, and a moment later I felt the foot of my bed compress and could feel the mattress deform around my feet, up besides my legs and roughly to my hips. I looked. No cat. I don't know how to explain this. I don't believe in ghosts, and I'm sure grief can cause some pretty significant psychological disturbances. A quick perusal of my past history will very quickly show I'm anything but cuddly. But I was absolutely in the kind of deep grief where one would expect that, as I love that cat more than basically anything else. Even typing this now, years later, makes my eyes well up with sadness for my lost friend. I could write off the sound of the plastic slats as a breeze or a hallucination. Older members of my family said they saw my father after he passed away, and I've read about grief-induced hallucinations before. But to feel my mattress deform like that, in exactly the way she used to circle my feet and come up beside me, I don't know what to think. Story 10. Most of my family is extremely religious and believes in ghosts wholeheartedly. Most of them claim to have seen something paranormal at some point in their lives. I wasn't very religious, and I always thought to myself, if I haven't seen it, then it's not real. That changed during my senior year in high school. I was dog-sitting at my great-aunt's house while she was out of town for a few days. A little after midnight, I was watching a movie, and my aunt's dog started barking like crazy and ran up the stairs at full speed. The dog was small but fierce. Suddenly, I heard a gravelly voice at the top of the stairs say, "Bad doggy." The voice was deep and masculine. I went upstairs because I was certain nobody else was supposed to be there. I looked around and there was nobody in sight. The dog was still barking at something that I couldn't see. She was just barking in an empty hallway. That's when I heard footsteps walking away from us down the hall and into my aunt's bedroom. I could hear the footsteps, but I couldn't see anybody making them. I noped out of that house with the dog and went outside in my car. The dog and I slept in there for the night. I'm not entirely sure what I experienced that night, but I definitely believe in the paranormal now. I never told my aunt about what happened, but apparently, my great-uncle, her husband, had died in that house a few months after I was born. I never knew him, but I'm willing to bet that it was him who I heard that night. I love dogs. I miss Toto, my four-legged best buddy growing up, but I wouldn't know what to do if he'd go crazy barking in the middle of the night at something I can't see. Story 11. I was a young kid when my grandma passed away and it made me sad. So around 2 months passed and I went to visit my grandma's house where my grandpa lives. So I woke up at 3 a.m. and heard footsteps from the bedroom door. I froze and saw my grandma walking up to me and she said, "Hello, little sweetie," and walked away. It was not sleep paralysis because I could move my hands and feet. In the morning I told my grandpa about it and he said, "I've seen grandma almost every night. She likes to visit, so don't be scared next time when you visit." Story 12. Working at a public pool, I would work alone after hours cleaning the building and the pool. One night around 2 a.m., I'm cleaning the change rooms. The pool has been closed for 4 hours at this time. I heard the sound of a child's laughter and bare feet running across the pool deck. I went out and scanned the area. There's nobody in sight. The doors were all closed and locked. There was nowhere a kid could be hiding. There were no wet footprints on the pool deck. I rechecked the doors and the security monitors. I was the only person in the building. It was unsettling. Story 13. I was staying at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, the hotel that inspired Stephen King to write The Shining. Around 1 a.m., I heard what sounded like children running up and down the hallways, interspersed with laughter. I opened the door to see what was going on and didn't see anything. Quick little buggers, I thought. Then the next morning, when my significant other and I took a tour of the building, the guide stopped directly in front of our room to tell us the story of young girls whose ghosts can be heard running up and down that same hallway. Story 14. So my grandma used to live with me. She was in the room next to mine and would get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, which is my room. There was a drop from her room to mine, so we put a nightlight outside the bathroom so she could see the way. It was like this for about 12 years. Only a few days after she had passed away, I was in bed with my cat and dog, reading a book or something. I remember my cat and dog both waking up and looking at the nightlight. My cat got up and went to the light, pawing at it and making noises. My dog just stayed still, not barking. I would grab him so he would calm down or go to sleep, but he never took his eyes off that spot. That's when I saw what I can only say looked like a light bend around the nightlight. I was positive it was my grandma coming back to use the bathroom or check on me in the house. To this day, she passed away about 5 years ago. I still have that nightlight there and turn it on every night for her. I haven't seen her or experienced anything like it again, but I'm sure she's still around. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy Night Owls. What was the creepiest thing that happened to you when everyone else was sleeping? Story 4 will make you think twice about answering phone calls when you're alone. See you in that video.